If you're a pop culture junkie who loves TV, film, music, comedy, and other really important stuff, then you've come to the right place. Get ready and settle in for Classic Conversations, the best pop culture interviews in the world. That's right, we circled the globe so you don't have to. If you're ready to be the king of the water cooler, then you're ready for Classic Conversations with your host, Jeff Dwoskin.
All right, Julia, thank you so much for that amazing introduction. You get the show going each and every week, and this week was no exception. Welcome, everybody, to episode 313 of Classic Conversations. As always, I am your host, Jeff Dwoskin. Great to have you back for what's sure to be the best, my friends, the best episode ever with my guest, Steve Hytner. You loved him as Kenny Banya on Seinfeld, In the Line of Fire, Good Luck Charlie, The X-Files, and so much more. And that is coming up in just a few seconds. And in these few seconds, Larry Joe Campbell joined me last week. We talked according to Jim, the Orville, Detroit Second City, and so much more. Do not miss that amazing episode. But right now, I got an episode that's gold, baby, gold for you. It's coming up right now. I got the opportunity to work with Steve Hytner. We did comedy together for a weekend, had a great time. I'm excited to share my conversation with you. Enjoy.
All right. I'm excited to introduce my next guest. You loved him on Modern Family, 2.5 Men, Friends, Hung. He's been on every show you've seen, but he'll always be known as Kenny Banya from Seinfeld. Put your hands together for Steve Hytner.
Wow, that was the introduction I was trying to get you to do the entire weekend. You finally nailed it.
Practice makes perfect.
That's amazing.
Every day.
Now, I forgot to ask a question before we started, but I'm just going to ask it, now. We're on Zoom. Is this video? Do you present it, or is this just audio when you present it?
I generally just do audio because I only have time to do one thing. And right. Occasionally, maybe I'll make a promo if you feel you look presentable enough.
I see. See, because I showered before this because it was Zoom. So I assumed that this could possibly be video.
Well, then I will go out of my way to make sure we do a video.
A lot of times showering is more about odor, and that really wouldn't have mattered either way.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes, I showered too. So I put a hat on though, but because I think sometimes like your routines, I forgot to do my hair. So it was like my
you saved so you didn't have to use any gel or mousse today because you had the hat.
Exactly.
All right. Well, this has to be riveting.
Gold. Well, comedian and actor. Well, first let me say, I had a great time working with you and Mark Price. Yeah. It was so much fun. Sometimes you get to you talk to headliners, I felt you were good. You were fun to hang out with.
Comedians can be an odd group, and headliners even more so, I think. Although this breed of new young comedians can be pretty weird as well.
Well, but you and Mark were very welcoming. I know you guys tour together, so you got your own little bond going on. But so anyway, thank you for making me part of the group, at least for a weekend. My wife enjoyed hanging out with you as well when we all went to the bar together.
Yeah, that was actually fun. I mean, that's part of the stuff, they talk about it in sports all the time about, what they really miss is the clubhouse and missing the camaraderie with the other athletes and stuff. And, to some degree, it's like that with comedians. Although a lot of times you'll meet a comedian, you're like, I don't want to hang out with that guy no matter what. But also for the most part, there's a lot of camaraderie of doing the club circuit. You're working with other people that are at different levels, if you will, of where they are in their career and stuff. And if the people are cool, it's fun to bang off them.
It was fun. I enjoyed your you didn't hold back when we had our banter. You didn't hold back.
Oh, yeah, that's nice. I know that's not really in my repertoire, the holding back, but I'll work on it.
No, I enjoyed it. It made me feel one of the group that you were busting my balls if I said something or whatever. But yeah, comedian or actor, which came first?
Actor. So I came from a very sports-minded childhood. I'm still a sports fanatic. So I had this idea. Everything was looked at in a sports prism of competitiveness. So a friend of mine, a year older than me, very simply, he did a play and everybody thought he was hilarious. And in my mind, I was like, I'm funnier than he is. And that's how, it's not a very artistic story, but it's basically how that happened. So the funnier would make you think I'm thinking about stand-up, but it wasn't. It was a play. I wanted to do a play and be funnier than he was. I did a play. I was funnier than he was. And so then I just kind of went on on this route of acting. And I kind of had this idea of, when I played Little League, I tried to go for high school first base. I was Little League all-star first base. I went for high school first base. It was so clear I was not going to be the first baseman. It was unbelievable. There was a guy there, Harry Adamakis, that was so good that he was clearly going to be the first baseman. So when I went into acting after high school, I kind of went with the idea of I'm just going to continue to pursue acting until I clearly hit a ceiling where I'm not as good as these other people, where they're all Harry Adamakis. I'm not as good as they are. And as I pursued my acting career, I never really felt like I ran into that. I always felt like, it's just as good as these people are. And then stand-up happened because, it's hard to get acting work. And there was the comedy explosion in the 80s. And I was in Manhattan at the time. So there was some stage time to be had. So that's how I ended up starting doing that.
You train as an actor?
Yeah, very, very much so. I studied with the serious teachers. I studied with Uta Hagen, Sanford Meisner, just the top of the top. Well, that's what I wanted to do. I was moved right into Greenwich Village. I lived in Manhattan. I was studying with the best of the best, a very serious actor. Obviously, I had some comedic overtones to it. But yeah, I went and studied with the best of the best. The weird thing is I started getting a little more traction with stand-up when I started doing that. Then I was starting to make kind of a living, like not a good living, but I wasn't waiting tables anymore. So I was making kind of a living at stand-up. And in my mind, I was like, you know what? I really don't want to head fully down this. I really believe in myself as an actor. I really want to do this. So I moved to LA. And when I moved to LA, I said to myself, I'm not going to do stand-up anymore I'm going to just pursue acting. So anyway, I was far enough along that I could get on at the Improv in LA or the Laugh Factory in LA. And I did. And then people would see me and they'd go, hey, like an agent or a manager would come up to me afterwards and go, hey, that was pretty good. I really enjoyed it. I go, do you like that? And he goes, yeah, we liked it. I go, yeah, I don't want to do that. I just want to act. And then sometimes that'd set him off in a bad way. But then eventually I found some reputation that was cool with that. And then the Reader's Digest quick version of it is I just started working. I was working as an actor for 20 something years and I did no stand-up, none. So the first time I did stand-up again was when we did the final Seinfeld. People were throwing offers at us to where we would watch the final Seinfeld. So the offer I ended up taking was a charity event for a radio station at the comic strip, which was the club I came out of in New York. And they flew me first class, paid me a bunch of money to watch the final Seinfeld there and also perform. They had a show before it. So I hadn't performed in 20 years or 15 years at that point. I don't know what it was at that point. And so I had to go up and do stand-up. And I was so concerned, like if I had my chops or not, that I actually brought a Seinfeld script on stage with me that I was going to raffle off and just figured that would take up a bunch of the time if I really didn't feel I could do stand-up. But I got back up and I fell into the stand-up in 2 seconds and I was right back into it. And so that when I did the final Seinfeld, that's when I first did stand-up again for the first time in probably 20 years.
Wow. All right. So going back 20 years real quick.
Yeah.
How much of an act did you have if you were already getting passed at all these clubs and all that kind of stuff? Like how established as a comedian were you at that point before you stopped?
I was not. I mean, when I was in New York, when I first started in New York, and I said, well, let me try stand-up because it's blowing up and there seems to be a lot of stage time. I had no act, of course. Also, I did an odd thing. I brought a guitar on stage with me when I did stand-up. And there's nothing odd about that unless you don't play the guitar. So I did not play the guitar. I found, I don't know what I was doing. I'm sure there's some subliminal protection thing, something between you and the audience. But there was also that little belly of the guitar that you can kind of look down at. And I had my act written in paper taped on there. So that kind of helped. And then I had the guitar in front of me. And then I had the guitar long enough that I started using it. Like when you're starting out, you tell some bad jokes. So I would boing on the guitar after a bad joke and that would get a laugh. Now all of a sudden I'm like, oh my God, I'm incorporating it into my act now. And I don't know when it happened, but eventually I just said, I'm sick of lugging this guitar around. So I just stopped carrying the guitar. But when I first did stand-up, I did wear a guitar. And now this part of it, to answer your question, sounds a little humble braggish. So probably it is. But I think I passed too fast at the comic strip. Like I passed at the comic strip probably I want to say like the fifth, sixth time I ever did stand up. And Lucian Hold, he's anybody who knows the comic strip in those days knows him. He's a legendary guy. He decided if you passed or failed. At that time, he passed me, but what he said I thought was so insulting. And it took me a lifetime to realize it wasn't. He passed me. And first of all, I was stunned I was passing at the sixth time I ever did stand up. He goes, I don't know about your material, but you stand there as good as anybody we got. And I was like, what the hell does that mean? What is that? So I was, of course, mortally wounded that he attacked my material, because every young comedian thinks it's all about material, not realizing that he was saying, you have a stage presence, you stupid son of a bitch. Years later, I realized the compliment it was. But again, I passed very, very fast at the comic strip, which then meant you went right to the bottom of the schedule and you just went on if people were still in the room. You weren't even on the schedule. It's just if people were still there.
All right. So it wasn't something that, was it easy then to just give it up? I mean, if you're at the bottom rung, even though you passed, which is huge, it's a long trek.
Oh, it is a long trek. But then after that, I started doing, every place in the tri-state area had comedy night. It was the mid 80s. And so you could go out on a Tuesday and go up to a club somewhere or bar in Connecticut that was having comedy night. And you started scratching together a living. Like I said, enough of a living where I wasn't waiting tables anymore. So at that point, I was saying I could see I was going down the road of stand-up, and I really didn't want to give up on the acting part. And that's why I said, well, if I'm going to pursue acting one more time, or at least a little more, I think I should go out to Hollywood. I think I should go out to film and TV and give it a swing there. And I did. And it worked out.
It did. It worked out. I'd say. So where did you wait tables anywhere notable? I mean, is there somebody who was like, telling a story somewhere like, it was at Chili's?
Yeah, I mean, if you knew New York in the 80s, you knew O'Neill's, which was owned by the actor Patrick O'Neill. O'Neill's on 57th and 6th. So it was a pretty well-known Irish steakhouse in the heart of Manhattan. And the great thing for me doing it was, first of all, the checks were big because it's steaks, right? And then it was an Irish sort of steakhouse, so you could be a smart ass and you didn't have to worry about it. So it was perfect for me. So I made, unbelievably great money and could be rude to the customers. And I would always be rude where they didn't know I was being rude. Like I had certain things, like if they asked me anything about food, I would say it's a delightful blend of East meets West. What are they going to do with that, right? Are they going to argue with me, right? They asked me anything about wine, I would say it's challenging yet familiar. What are they going to do with that? I just kind of mocked them as I was waiting on them. Yeah, the waiting tables was good, but eventually, look, my whole career, I was obsessed with monetizing. It was like, can I make money at it? I never wanted to do Macbeth in upstate New York and get great reviews and never make a penny acting. And not that there's anything wrong with that, but not for me. I was like, can I make money at acting? Can I make money at stand-up? And that was my barometer.
I think you met it because I Googled your name and did not find one raving review.
That's very good. That's very good. And you could spend even more time searching and the result would not change.
Okay. So Meisner, when you studied Meisner, give me if it's possible to give me a quick,
so in contrast, the Uta Hagen was about doing all this back work and understanding your character and doing tons of research and what kind of flowers that character liked and what kind of wood that character liked, knowing your character and everything about it. That's one way. Meisner's technique was much more acting truthfully under imaginary circumstances. That's the phrase. But it was also very much a pinch ouch, where the person, what they say to you is the pinch and you respond with the ouch. So it's much more a in the moment, spontaneous sort of work. For me, that was much, much more interesting. And I had spent years studying Uta, and I just, as soon as I went to Meisner, I was like, this is more me. This is more me. So almost to the point where just by the nature of pinch ouch, you would think that could lend itself, not that it's supposed to, but it could lend itself to something more improvisational, just the idea of pinch ouch. And certainly any sort of skill at stand-up would probably lead to more improvisational. So maybe, it was just meant to be that style would be the one that I would respond to. Once I started acting a lot, and then certainly once I was on Seinfeld, I feel like I was always kind of prejudged when I went in the room anyway, that they were kind of like, it was funny to me that I started with such serious thoughts and serious teachers. And by that point, when I walked in the room, they were like, oh, he's the funny guy, which, I am. But
You are.
as an actor, you like to think you're a chameleon and you can do everything.
So you're making them laugh too hard, and then that's how they saw you.
You know what? That does happen. Actually, that does happen. And so, but, at that point, look, I always thought of it this way. Building a career as an actor, certainly, because you want to be able to do different things. It's different than stand-up. As an actor, it's like an umbrella. You want to have a closed umbrella, and you want to poke your way in with that point of the umbrella. Then if you're lucky enough that you'll be able to open that umbrella when you're already in and you have enough behind you to be able to open that umbrella and show all the different levels that you can do. But a lot of times, if you're lucky enough to puncture your way in with the closed umbrella, they want you to do that again and again and again, which is, not because I always hear myself talking. It's like, and to some actor who's worked for years and who has tried for years and doesn't get to work, I'm sure they listen to that and go, oh, yeah, that must be so horrible when they ask you to work again. So
Stop asking me to work so much.
Yeah, I know. You want me to do the same thing again for that much money?
Ah, pinch. Ouch.
Exactly.
Okay, so a serious acting, and then talk to me about your first role.
All right, so there's just a classic thing about, I don't know if this would be even interesting, but we were doing a play called The Tavern up in the regional theater up in Albany, and I was getting paid for it. And, I had so many brilliant acting ideas in my mind. And so I'm meeting with the director, and he goes, so have you looked at the script? Yes, he cast me in it. I said, yeah. He goes, well, what are your thoughts? I go, well, here's what I'm thinking. I said, a lot of times I get very broad ideas of what I think the character is. So sometimes in rehearsal, I like to actually act out those two-dimensional ideas just to get them out of my head and done. And then maybe I can get to something a little more layered and not as two-dimensional. But so if you see me early on just doing work that looks really obvious, I think I'm just trying to get all that out. And he looks at me, and after that, and I spoke a lot longer than that. He looks at me and he goes, well, we won't be having time for that. It's like, oh, okay. Never mind.
How long did you do theater before you started doing movies and TV?
I did theater probably about 4 or 5 years. I did summer stock theater. I did regional theater. Then I got like a one line on a soap opera in New York, doing all that. And then the stand-up came in. So yeah, I did a bunch of theater. 4 or 5 years of theater. I like theater. And also when I finally did stand-up and he said, you stand there as good as anybody we got, it probably came from my presence on stage from doing so much theater.
These days, do you rather go do a play? Do you consider the stand-up now kind of your theater moment? Or, would you like to still one day land you still audition for TV roles? And
yeah, I do. I don't as much right now. Right now, I'm just doing stand-up. But if a TV or film role is like a friend just calls me and goes, you want to do this? And yeah, I'll do that. But I'm not down in LA auditioning for film and TV right now. And theater, unless it was something really interesting that I wanted to do, it's just not going to pay me it's not going to pay me enough for me to want to do it. So at the same time, I said, I really love the idea of monetizing. In some ways, it's also been, I don't know if it's been a detriment, but I do kind of limit myself. At some point, I just said, yeah, I want to be paid. I want to be paid well to do this stuff. And so I don't as often go off on hey, let me do this play for 3 months and make zero money. Not that it couldn't happen, but it would have to be an unbelievable vehicle that I thought would be really positive for me.
Is Seinfeld what you're most recognized for? Do you have a lot of Prophecy fans out there?
Yeah, there are a lot of Prophecy fans out there. There's a lot of, a lot of Friends fans out there. And I did one episode of Friends. But it's hard. Seinfeld's like an 800-pound gorilla, as I like to say. It's just on. It's on right now. So that has been, I would say, the most. But, I also have demographics. I did a whole bunch of Disney shows. That Good Luck Charlie, Zach and Cody.
That's So Raven.
Yeah, That's So Raven, Wizard of Waverly. I did all those. So when somebody comes up to me, I can almost tell by their demographic of, where they're heading on how they know me. Or those, a lot of times I'll get fooled because it'll be somebody younger. So I think it's going to be one of the Disney shows, but it's like them getting a photo for their father, who is a Seinfeld fanatic. So, but whatever it is, it's all cool. But yeah, I would obviously say Seinfeld is number one, but I'm often surprised. I mean, I did X-Files. People come up to me about X-Files all the time because science fiction stuff, that genre has rabid fans.
Yeah, because like my wife loves you from Seinfeld, but is more obsessed with the Friends role because she's obsessed with Friends. As we speak, she's putting together a 1,000-piece Friends puzzle. So,
is she really?
Yeah, we rewatched the episode where you're Jennifer Aniston's boss and Joey buys the boat, and we relived the whole episode with
I don't know if I've ever relived it, but that's good that she did.
Were they cool when you were there?
Yeah, I mean, by the time I was there, I was in one of the last seasons. I literally don't know which season, but I know it was one of the last seasons. It could have been the last season. I don't know. So they were kind of like a finely oiled machine. So, they were pleasant and stuff, but, they were in and out doing their stuff and busy, had 5 different things going. But again, I don't want to give the impression they weren't. They were very nice. But like I said, very busy and 8 seasons in or whatever it was.
I know when we were talking about Seinfeld, when we were hanging out in the green room, the amazing thing about popularity of your character, when you think about how many episodes of Seinfeld there were, you were only in 6 episodes across all 9 seasons. So it's
I know it's crazy. And that's not just true for Banya or myself. Buddy, Patrick was in 9 episodes, right?
It's amazing. Like when you
seems like he was in 37 episodes.
At least 37, if not 150.
Exactly. Exactly. And the only reason I came across that, and it said how many episodes people had been in. And I've had people say that to me so often, and I agree with it, that, wow, I really only did 6 episodes. So that's when I decided, when I saw the list, I said, well, let me see. Let me see about other people. And that's when I looked at Patrick and Putty. I was like, 9. That's the same kind of feeling, right? You would think he was in 100.
I think it goes to the writing of that show and how they created this world. Because if we're going just by IMDb, you got Wayne Newman. Wayne Knight was only in 44 episodes. And this is
that seems out of how many?
172.
Weren't there? That's how many episodes there were? 172.
That's how many Jerry was in.
Okay.
And George and Michael Richards. Yeah.
Okay.
Somehow we remember Julie Louis-Dreyfus. She was only in 170 of them.
Well, wasn't there an episode George wasn't in and Jason got really upset about it?
Well, it looks like they gave him credit, but it's funny because Jerry's parents, I think you feel like, okay, they weren't in, they were in minimal because they came and went. That was their characters, but it's interesting.
Well, then also for myself, it was more than 6 episodes. Because Jerry used to like to stick Banya into episodes. And then at the end, and then when we did tape night, when they went into editing, they couldn't keep what I had done because they had long shows anyway. So they had a challenge of editing it down every week. And so when Jerry, which at least 3 or 4 times, I'd get a call midweek and go, hey, Jerry just stuck you into the episode. I'm like, awesome. And I'd go down, shoot my stuff. And it really wasn't based on whether it worked or not, or it was funny. It usually was good. It's just a matter of there was no room for it. But Jerry just had an idea. Oh, that'd be funny. Like the perfect example is the Soup Nazi, where midweek Jerry was like, oh, call Steve. We'll have Banya cut in line. And then that one stayed. It was like, it just made perfect sense. If they're online, well, what are they going to do when they're online? Well, let's have Banya annoy them. So I probably shot 9 or 10. And then, the other ones didn't make the cut. And Jerry would call me at my house, the house phone, which people used to have, and say, hey, I'm sorry, we just couldn't fit it in. I'm like, Jerry, just keep thinking of me, buddy. Just keep thinking of me. Throw me in there.
For Seinfeld, what was the audition process to land this role?
I had auditioned for other roles on Seinfeld that I did not get. So, and then Seinfeld fanatics are always, what parts? And I don't remember them all. I do remember one was when Kramer had to send to the beach. And there was the guy who owned the perfume company or whatever. And I remember I had auditioned for that and not gotten it. Something else and not gotten it. And so obviously I was working a lot at that time. So they were interested in me. And then all of a sudden comes this audition and all it said is the most annoying person in the world. It's always thoughtful when people think of you at a time like that. So I didn't know what I wanted to do with it. And I was like, am I going to audition for the #1 show in the world and not get it again? And then in the waiting room, the walls are thin. You can hear people auditioning. And they were all doing this really, because it just said annoying. So they were doing this mean thing of, hey, you owe me. You owe me. I gave you that suit. You owe me. And I was listening to that going, how long can that be funny for? Just anger. Anger can be funny for like a couple of seconds, but doesn't usually last. So I just decided, what if he's annoying because he adores Jerry and he's a lapdog? And now you would go, well, yeah, that was the character. But it really wasn't the character. The really amazing moment was when I went in and they had been seeing all these guys yelling and being angry. And when I went in and I just did that whole, hey, Jerry, and this very upbeat, thrilled guy. Well, Jerry and Larry literally lost it, fell off the couch in 1 second. And I was like, okay, I think this one's going better. And so I booked it. So then when you do the table read, the first thing you do is a table read in front of all the network, in front of everybody, and of course, in front of the writers. So the writers, that's the first time they saw what I was doing with it. So then the good writers are going to go, oh, great. So then they built on that, and they built Banya that way because the actor who booked it had brought it in that way. So like the really good work comes from actors and writers working together, not constantly working against each other, which sometimes it feels like.
It's interesting that you inspired the writers, though, right? That's part of this dynamic that you're describing. And you brought more to it and it became more, right? Because I'm guessing this could have just been
absolutely
in the hands of another actor, one episode that we don't ever talk about.
Yeah, absolutely could have. The other thing is that, look, the character of Banya is really large. That's a large acting character, okay? And this is the number one show in the world at that time. I came in on season 6. So it's already number one by far. And so now I'm doing all this stuff. And every time I'm rehearsing, everyone's falling off their chairs. All 4 of them, we're in the diner scene. They're in the booth and I'm doing my thing. And we can't even get through a rehearsal. They're laughing so hard. And then the day before the studio taping, the 4 of them were sitting there in the diner and we're just in between rehearsing and stuff. And I go, I'm getting really nervous about tomorrow. And they're like, what? And I go, this character is enormous. If I do this character and it doesn't work on the number one show in the world, I'm done. If I do this huge, overreaching thing and the audience doesn't respond, I'm done. And the 4 of them, to their credit, they're like, no, trust it. And just please trust it. Don't take it down. Just do what you're doing. So I trusted them. And I swear that character, when I walked into the diner for my first scene, I just start talking. And it's like the audience knew the character for 10 years already. It's like they just clicked into him. And I could, Jerry just looked upstage at me where the audience couldn't see him and just gave me that smile like, I told you. And so it was a huge character that worked. But I did get cold feet like the day before the first taping.
In watching Seinfeld, I remember any of the characters that they would bring in, they did such a good job making you feel like they knew you for so long.
That's a great point. Yeah. And that's done through acting and writing, because they have to lay in what's called exposition, or what in the business they call pipe. So it's like information about the character or the situation that has to come out. So there's creative ways of doing exposition, of having the characters say it, and there's less creative ways where they just say it. So the writers were always really good about building that backstory about a character. And then the four of them, which is really great at exuding their disdain or their love for a character that, like you said, immediately gives the feeling that this person has been around.
Yeah, they did that over and over again.
Yeah, no doubt.
Rick Overton and the Drake, or any example. You can
and they set that up well. That's how I felt when I brought Banya into the diner. I couldn't believe how quickly the audience seemed to be completely up to speed on who Banya was and what was going on a character I wasn't even completely up to speed with yet. I was still figuring it out. But that also happens, everything now is single camera. No, there's very few studio audiences, but also, the audience can help you shape a character as you continue to perform it in front of them. They can kind of help guide you in certain ways that you may not even be aware they're helping guide you towards. So the audience can be a part of that as well. And that's what I noticed to the audience being a part of it, was that they were so on top of the character. And I was just trying to get them to even go along with me so I could eventually prove the character. No, they were in on hello.
I did not read this in the Guinness Book of World Records, and I'm just kind of making it up right now, but it would seem that your character as a single character, guest character, reoccurring character, has more catchphrases or rememberable lines. Can you even think of another character? Not that someone who would have been on 100 episodes. Let's say you were the 6 that you actually appeared on. I mean, that's gold, Jerry. There's, puke. That's a funny word. I'm huge. The Ovaltine joke.
Soup's not a meal.
Soup's not a meal. I mean,
it's unbelievable.
I mean, it's like there's gotta be like a record there.
I know, it really is. The only one that when we started, the first one was, and you didn't even mention it, the best, Jerry, the best. That was the first one, right? Which was kind of a catchphrase. And then after an episode or two, we used it so much, everybody was like, all right, let's take that cadence out of the best, Jerry, the best, double it up, because we felt like we had hit that enough. And then my probably biggest catchphrase was in the last episode. When I say last episode, I'm not counting the finale, which was, that's gold, Jerry, gold. But at that point, we had let go of the tag, the best, Jerry, the best. So it just said that's gold. And this is now years later where I said, well, let's bring back the tag. That's gold, Jerry, gold. And everybody was like, oh, yeah, that'd be great. That'd be great. But that happened after 3.5 years of not using it anymore. And then going, maybe it'll be good. Maybe it'll be good again right here. Because just the idea of saying gold twice is, for some reason, hilarious.
It was what makes it iconic, I think.
Yeah, I think so too. And that came from the very first catch thing I had of the best, Jerry, the best. And then we let it go for a while. But yeah, I mean, that is a insane amount of catchphrases. I don't know if there's anything to be said, like for the actor who did them, meaning like, yeah, that's me. I'm great at them catchphrases. But, it just sort of happened. It's their great writing and the fact that you hear it a lot. The show's on, right? The show's on a lot. But it is a lot of catchphrases, or as I always kid around, I have signed more jars of Ovaltine than anybody who ever lived, and I had that record at 1. Who else besides me has ever signed a jar of Ovaltine?
It's amazing. I remember at the show, someone was like, I had a jar of Ovaltine. I meant to bring it. And then it was all said. One of my favorite, though, exchanges is when you're like, the swordfish, Jerry, it's the best. It's best. And then Jerry goes, I'll have the salmon.
I'll have the salmon. Yeah. I happen to think that Jerry is brilliant in that scene, because there's all this talk about, he's not a good actor. I like to think I'm a decent actor. And I know when I'm working with somebody who's got it, right? And he's unbelievable in that scene. Just the way I say, I'll save the meal for another time. And before he speaks, he just cocks his head. He cocks his head like he's digesting what just happened. And I'm like, that is a perfect little moment. And you can't like let those moments go by and go, well, he can't act. He's just being him. No, he's especially for me in that scene, a really good actor.
I agree.
Sorry to interrupt. I have to take a quick break. I do want to thank everyone for their support of the sponsors. When you support the sponsors, you're supporting us here at Classic Conversations. And that's how we keep the lights on. And now back to my conversation with Steve Hytner.
And I will say, like, in terms of the catchphrasing, you have to take a lot of credit for it, because a lot of times the catchphrases are how something is said, right? If I just, oh, hey, I'll be back. Right? No.
Well, he tells the story about how that line was, I will be back. Have you heard him Schwarzenegger talk about that? And the line was, I will be back. Schwarzenegger didn't want to say I'll be back. He said, no, it's more mechanical if I say I will be back. And then what's his name, director?
James Cameron.
Yeah, thank you. James Cameron said, yeah, hey, you know what? I'm the director. Why don't I direct? And you just say the lines I tell you to say. And then that became, arguably one of the biggest catchphrases in history, right?
Right. But when people say it, I'll be back.
Yeah, right? Because of the sound. And look, there's no doubt that Banya has a certain sound.
Yeah, nobody would be somewhere and go, oh, yeah, that's gold. They go, that's gold, Jerry, gold. They imitate you. So that's part of it. Yeah,
it is part of it. It is part of it. All right, I take the compliment. There, done.
Take it, gosh, dang it. What was it like coming back for the Seinfeld reunion on Curb Your Enthusiasm?
Oh, that was interesting. I don't know. There was a lot going on then. There was a lot going on then. Michael had, just gotten himself in trouble with all that stuff at the Laugh Factory. And Jerry, and we were doing those reunion things, and they were going to try and lay in some things on those episodes that would help Michael, because Michael got very negatively affected by it. Michael's the sweetest guy in the world. He works outside the box. He was just being outside the box. That's how he is. He has to take responsibility for what he said. I'm not taking any of that away. But it was at a perfect time, meaning the worst perfect time, where all of a sudden flip phones had video cameras in them. And he was at a club and being crazy, and that all got recorded. And it affected Michael so much that he left the country for a while. And when I think back to the reunion show, the Seinfeld reunion stuff on Curb, I think very much about that time and that energy and stuff. But for me, it was fun to head back in there. I mean, I'm in doing scenes with Super Dave Osborne, just standing there going, I can't believe this is happening. But I've been fortunate in my career. I've had amazing moments. I mean, I have scenes with Clint Eastwood that were amazing. But I was standing next to Super Dave Osborne, and I was nervous. I was like, I love this guy.
Bob Einstein is one of the funniest human beings in the world. Of course,
yeah. And I always call him Super Dave Osborne because that's how he came into my life. I mean, I'm not saying that's all he's ever done, but for me, when I was younger, sitting home watching TV and I saw that stuff, I was like, I don't know who this guy is, but he is unbelievable.
100% same. Super Dave Osborne, bizarre, right? And then he had his own show. And then
yeah. Just amazing. So for me, that was incredible. And then there was a lot of B-roll on that shoot, meaning like we were shooting the Seinfeld's reunion inside the Curb show. And then there was tons of like Entertainment Tonight and stuff, shooting B-roll, shooting us, shooting that inside that. So it was a lot of weird levels of shooting happening during that, which was interesting.
Yeah, I remember loving that. I just thought it was a cool way to do it without doing it.
Yeah, because I've been wrong about so many things in my life, but I don't believe he'd ever do another do a real reunion in any way. I could be wrong, but I would probably bet the ranch he would not.
We should have a Kenny spinoff, and and then he can like come in and out. They can come in and out of it. That would be amazing. That would be gold. You handle the Seinfeld thing well when it comes to the fans. I mean, I saw that firsthand. And what I mean by that is some people don't like to be like, oh, I did that so long ago. Stop. I'm me now. Like you embrace it, and you, to your credit, like 40 minutes of killer material on stage. You don't even bring it up to like 40 minutes in. Yeah,
that's what I try and do to make sure, because I know there's a level of some people in the room are like, all right, well, he was Banya, he's an actor, but I don't know if that means he's going to be funny as a comedian. And I know that to some degree, for people who haven't seen me before, there must be that feeling in the room. So I like to get up there and kick ass for, like you said, 30, 40 minutes before I even bring it up. But, some shows, as I don't know that weekend, if not, some people have what I call Seinfeld Tourette's, where like as soon as I get on the stage, they're screaming, they're just like, let's go, Jerry, soup's not a meal. They're just, they cannot be stopped. So then if they do that, then I have to deal with it right up front, and that's fine. But for the most part, I like to just go through a whole chunk before I bring it up. And then also, it's a double-edged sword with your compliment of you deal with it well and you embrace it. It's a fine line because I also because I try and deal with it kindly and nicely, then some people will then put on me, oh, he loves it. He absolutely, look at him, he loves it. So I have to be a complete a-hole. I have to completely say, no, I don't want to be seen as this or known as this at all. And I have to be mean to everybody to show that I'm not just still completely digging it. So, but to me, I just look at it the other way of, look, if I go outside my door, somebody's going to scream, that's gold, Jerry, gold. That's going to happen every time I go out the door. So why would I turn that into a negative? It just seems like a stupid choice, right? So, oh, great. Let me be pissed off every day. What a great way to go.
Right. You were blessed with something that a lot of people never get.
Right. So, I mean, I know if somebody's an asshole or not. If I'm sitting there with my family and I'm in the middle of a dinner and they're walking up and they don't have enough common sense to let me have my dinner, then I know, they're probably a jerk. But If I'm standing in a public place or I'm at a bar or if I'm just out with, yeah, that's part of the gig. People come up to you. Yes, it happens. Oh, it's so horrible. So I try and be kind and not be a jerk about it, but then you'll get labeled of, oh, yeah, oh, he just loves it.
I will say on Wikipedia, it goes out of its way to say Steve Hytner and Christopher Walken were not in Prophecy 4 and 5.
Does it say that?
Yeah.
Well, let me tell you something. I didn't know there was a Prophecy 4 and 5.
You should talk to your agent because I know that. No, I'm just kidding.
Oh, no, please. 3 was plenty.
Right. Well, that's you and Christopher. Can I call him Chris? You and Christopher Walken's claim to fame. You're the only 2 actors in all 3.
In all 3
movies.
Yeah. Christopher's what a piece of work, man. I mean that in the best way possible. I loved every second of hanging out with him, every second of acting with him. You never know what's going to happen. You just you want to just stand there clapping your hands like crazy, just going, I can't believe this is happening. This is so much fun. You never know what he's going to say to you. You never know what kind of mood he's going to be in. You never know what he's going to do on take 2 from what he did on take 1. It's just a potpourri.
I can only imagine what that might be like. That would be amazing.
Yeah, it is.
There was you had one line in there that was, I could see that on a shirt if you went to a Prophecy convention.
Is it when the hermaphrodite thing?
No, it was like, slow down. Everybody's dead. I'm like...
Yeah. So, but that we were talking about the things you get recognized for. Anything that's in that sci-fi way, like The Prophecy, like X-Files, they have their fans and they are, fanatical. And then for the catchphrases, people come up to me, and obviously the number one is that's gold, Jerry Gold. But sometimes people say ones that are so specific and so remote. I'm like, wow, I'm standing somewhere. And it was also weird because he did it kind of quiet. He snuck up on me. This guy kind of sneaks up on me and he goes, hey, Kramer, that Nancy Boy Cream got all over the ticket. I'm like, oh, that is very specific, sir. And you're creeping me out.
You've done a lot of CSI.
You know what? I would have done all the CSIs, except I didn't do Miami. And Miami was the one where we were just waiting because they also thought we could have done an episode where I was his brother or something like that, because looks-wise with the reddish hair and stuff. So we were always waiting on CSI Miami for the right script where I was like a relative. But that script never really happened. So then I ended up not even doing CSI Miami, but I did do New York and what was the other one? Las Vegas?
Well,
just CSI?
CSI.
Oh, yeah, just CSI, which was Las Vegas. Right.
In your credits, what would be your favorite thing? Like Bill Engvall Show, Jeff Foxworthy, Boston Legal. I'm just randomly Pushing Daisies. You were in Pushing Daisies.
I was in Pushing Daisies. Yeah. For me, I really I did a series on NBC for 2 years in the late 90s called Working with Fred Savage and Arden Marine. And we did 2 seasons and I played, it was basically Scrubs before Scrubs, where we were working in a work environment and then they would do dream sequences. And we did 2 seasons and then Scrubs came on and did that in a hospital environment. And then they had a great run with it. I'm not saying they took anything or anything like that, but it just to let people know what Working was doing. It was that kind of dream sequence thing. And I loved the character I played on that. Loved the people I was working with. But that was just like a role that I was like, man, I could have played that part for 9 seasons and had a blast with it. And then other stuff is just like dream fulfillment, like doing a scene in the Line of Fire, several scenes in the Line of Fire with Clint Eastwood. And like in the scene, you're yelling at each other. And I'm just doing a scene with Clint Eastwood where I'm just screaming, teeing off. And at the next minute, he tees off on me and I back up completely and I'm completely timid. So you're doing like a real scene with Clint Eastwood. And those moments, you're just like, wow, I never thought it would quite get to this. And that's another different level of the best moment. Some of them are about the acting and some of them are just about pinch me. I did a movie called The Marrying Man. Alec Baldwin, myself, Paul Reiser, Fisher Stevens. And that was unbelievable. It was a Neil Simon movie. And that was the film where Alec met Kim Basinger. The weekend before we started, maybe a couple of weeks before we started filming, they sent us, it was Hollywood Pictures at the time. They sent us to Vegas, the 4 of us, just to become friends. We all had suites in the brand new Mirage Hotel. And we went to see Sinatra. I mean, just some unbelievable stuff. So sometimes the outside stuff is as memorable as the work itself.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, amazing career. You're hilarious.
Like I said, I'm getting away with it. I'm getting away with it.
Oh, man. Thanks for hanging out with me. I appreciate it.
No, I enjoyed it. I have this thing about podcasts, comedy podcasts. It doesn't seem to happen as much. But when they were first starting, there was like this whole, I don't know, soap opera to the comedy world. There still is a little bit. But it'd be like I do a podcast and they go, so who are some of your favorite comedians? And I knew they were only asking that because the next question was going to be, who are some of your least favorite comedians? Like that crap. And I'm like, you know what? I'm not playing. I don't do that. I don't want to play that on many levels. One of them, stand-up so hard that stand-ups should just have stand-ups back no matter what. You know, it's just an insanely hard thing to do, and it has to look insanely easy. So whenever stand-ups are attacking stand-ups, I don't dig it.
Oh, well, there goes my next question. Name 3 horrible things about Jerry Seinfeld. I'm just going to cross that out.
So I name your 3 least favorites.
I'm with you on that. Oh, wait, you were in Detroit for Hung? Did they film that here?
Yes, we shot all of the interiors in LA, all of the exteriors in Detroit.
And did you have to be hung to be in the show?
Yeah, well, as I say, unfortunately, I was not the title role. If you can imagine, I played a comedic, annoying person.
Pinch, ouch.
Pinch, ouch. Acting truthfully under imaginary circumstances.
Where can people keep up with you? Are you on the Twitter or whatever they call it now?
Yeah, I'm on the Twitter, the X, whatever you want to call it. There's SteveHytner.com. As I said, I'm almost exclusively doing stand-up now. I do a bunch of corporate stand-up because I'm a whore. And there's all different, like for me, there's like 3 different levels of it. There's clubs, there's theaters, there's corporate, and they all have their own individual challenges and their own individual paychecks. But yeah, I would say SteveHytner.com or look for me in your local listings. I'm really enjoying stand-up right now. Another way to say it is acting is the most collaborative art form there is. Other actors, hair, makeup, wardrobe, director, sets, everything. You're collaborating with 100 people. Stand-up is the least collaborative art form there is. It's just writer, director, talent, you're everything, right? And the reviews come in immediately. And I'm kind of enjoying the least collaborative art form right now.
Well, you keep enjoying that least collaborative art form. You do it so well. A hoot working with you that whole weekend.
That was a fun weekend. We will definitely do it again.
I would love that. And thank you so much for honoring me.
No, it was great to get it. And look, we'll get together and your wife can ask me 100 Friends questions on the one episode I did.
I will do that.
All right, Jeff. Be well.
All right. How amazing was Steve Hytner? I know. My voice is a little off right now. So if you're catching that in the intro in this one right now, but I'm okay. Anyway, so fun working with Steve when we did comedy together, and Mark Price and being able to catch up with him and do the podcast. Can't believe it's over. It just flew by. Huge thanks again to you, Steve Hytner, for hanging out with me. You're awesome. And a huge thank you to all of you for coming back week after week. It means the world to me. And I'll see you next time.
Thanks so much for listening to this episode of Classic Conversations. If you like what you heard, don't be shy and give us a follow on your favorite podcast app. Also, why not go ahead and tell all your friends about the show? You strike us as the kind of person that people listen to. Thanks in advance for spreading the word, and we'll catch you next time on Classic Conversations.